Hello, Calaveras County, and welcome to another edition of Mondo Calaveras. I'm your host, Mike Taylor. Now, we just survived an election, and I won't even go anywhere near talking about most of that, except for talking about some of the issues that we're going to face here in Calaveras County. And my guest today is right now a seated member of the Board of Supervisors, Cliff Edson. Wonderful to have you again.
Thanks. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, except, and this is what I'd like to talk about, is where is the growth of marijuana going to go in Calaveras County now?
Well, don't know. It's uncertain. Mm-hmm. I know what's going to happen in California. Mm-hmm. So Prop 64 passed, with our urgency ordinance that was in place, mm-hmm. We had the regulations that would control it here. I think that there was a lot of forces against that, and mm-hmm. it prevented it from effectively being exercised. So there's a lot of fear mongering and all kinds of good stuff out there.
I know it was bad stuff, Cliff.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
And so much of it unsubstantiated.
Yeah.
Or when you start talking about it, and I'm sorry to derail you there a little bit, but this is something that's been bothering me since 2 months before the election. Don't say this is happening when it's not. If it doesn't show up in the sheriff's log, you didn't call law enforcement, so it must not have been a problem, is kind of where I go with a lot of that. Oh yeah, there are packs of their dogs walking around. The other thing that bothers me is that our community has digressed down to what I will call name calling. You know, they're not dopers, they're business people.
Yeah, well,
a good portion of them anyway.
The political climate nationwide turned into that. Here we are in Calaveras County. We have a diverse group of folks here in the county. Mm-hmm. I understand completely how people are against it. I understand how people are for it. For me, it was about a situation that was coming into the county, and we had to manage it somehow. Mm-hmm. It was obvious to me that we weren't going to be able to manage it by trying to shut the door on it, because at least the ban word is a good word, but it's been banned since I graduated from high school in 1974, and it hasn't worked. So, and I believe that we put together an ordinance that would work if it had the chance to move forward and be executed properly. We didn't get that chance. Or, it came during election time. I think that there were many things that happened that didn't allow it to happen the way it should have. And part of that might be my fault for presuming that we could actually all work together to make something happen. And then the state had Prop 64 coming up. We had the fire. We had people that didn't want their land anymore with wells, and the perfect place for people to come in and pay cash for property. And we had an influx of folks that wanted to take advantage, and they did. So now it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to be managed. I still believe that our ordinance is the route. The folks that I have met there's people, in any part of your life that there's good folks and there's bad folks, The folks that I have met, the professional ones that are actually very serious about medical cannabis, are very serious about medical cannabis. Yeah. And they are professional. They run a very clean operation. It's controlled, and it's very secure. And then there's those others. Just like, the same thing for people that are taking pills, drinking alcohol. It's human behavior. So, am I pro-cannabis or not pro-cannabis? I was pro-regulation. We had to make an attempt to get control of it. It's been here for a long time. Yeah. It was hiding for a long time. the perfect storm came with the fire and Prop 64 and Prop 47, and here we are.
Yeah. Do you now in about a month you won't be on the board anymore? Where do you think this new board will go, or was that new board elected to continue the? Because it looks to me like a board that's going to come in and say, "Oh hell no."
Well, I think there's a lot to consider. I would say, like it or not, the cannabis in the past 4 years or so, have been keeping a lot of businesses in business.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't even like saying that, really. But it's the truth. And, the one thing that I do know is there's a group of folks that self-regulated because they wanted to take themselves away from the cartel, cartel or organized crime or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But they wanted to take themselves away from the black market
sort of side of it.
Yeah, and it scared them, And so and they did, and they tried to become legitimate. And there's a resistance to that. I guess people think whatever they're going to think, and I can't control people's beliefs, so.
Yeah.
I believe what I believe, but it's way bigger than I think anybody thought. Especially since California just made it very clear, that it was going to legalize it, and that just everybody in the whole country took a look at. I think all of the counties in California and said, "Oh, here's one with a lot of water, a lot of available cheap land, and some law enforcement. Oh, that's perfect."
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we are.
And so we have groups from Rhode Island, Connecticut, and all over the place.
Yeah, and they're not local, and that makes people uncomfortable.
Very much so.
Yeah, and but if you had any type of industry that came into the Calaveras County, if it was pretty good size, you're gonna get people from outside coming in because that's who's going to have to work.
Well, and when there's money to be made, people will show up. Do you think, and this may be oversimplifying it, but is the growing of marijuana, is that the golden ticket for Calaveras County?
No, I don't think so. I think it's part of it. I think that it was advertised as the ticket because we really don't have much else right now.
Yeah.
We have agriculture, which is your grapes and animals, basically. It plays a part, but it's not growing. It's pretty much stagnant.
It stays the same.
You have your tourism, which is going to probably take a dramatic decrease in the next few years, probably 8 or 10 years, because of the fact that everybody in the world is taking our water out of the lakes and our tree mortality. So we have we're going to have brown trees. People usually come up to our part of the country to enjoy the beautiful forests and the great water in the lakes, and it's going to be very hard to find up in here, except for Big Trees is still doing very, very well.
Yeah.
So that's a big plus right
Keep
there.
the fingers crossed for now.
Got them crossed,
yeah,
man.
yeah, and the toes and the eyes.
Yeah.
Because the reason the trees die isn't necessarily the lack of water. It's when they get stressed, as our drought has placed them in, and then those magic little bugs come in.
I believe the drought is cyclical, and our forests are overgrown. If we were able to manage the forests according to the conditions, I think we would have a lot better success on keeping healthy forests.
Well, and we wouldn't have the massive fires that we have. So yeah. Well, and that's the sad thing too. You just said it. It's coming.
Yes, it is.
The Butte fire wasn't it, unfortunately.
No, I don't think so.
And the Rim fire wasn't it. So yeah. What do you think? And so now, as a Calaveras County business person, what do you think the next step? What should this new Board of Supervisors do with regard to growing cannabis?
I think they should take a step to bring certainty, whatever it is. So if they are going to eliminate that industry here, then they need to make that clear. and then they need to figure out how they're going to do it.
Yeah,
which
they better
means-
find some money to pay for the law enforcement because that's where suddenly all of these grows that thought they were going to have the chance to come forward and be legitimate or legitimized under the urgency ordinance, if that goes away.
Yeah, law enforcement will be a smaller and smaller part of it because it's mostly civil now. So it still has to be funded to enforce. Just right now, law enforcement is supposed to go out with your code enforcement folks to make sure everything's safe. And code enforcement is the one that does most of it. And unless there's criminal behavior found or something that can be, prosecuted.
Okay.
But most of it is civil.
Okay.
And that's been the real problem for many years. And so, law enforcement pretty much had their hands tied, and I can't blame them for anything. So,
and maybe this is someone not too well informed on what's going on, but the busts and raids that happened in, say, about 2 months before the election, to me that appeared as though, and we can use the word cartel if we want, but those were the black market types that were going to be the black market types anyway, weren't they?
Are you talking about the ones up in
in the West Point area?
West Point area?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was illegal grows. They weren't registered, and they had no intention of becoming legal.
No.
There are lots of groups up there like that. We don't hear about them too much because they're really good at what they do, and so they're up there. It's black market. It's a big money business, and they have quite a bit of resources. So. It was one of the reasons why we wanted to regulate is to minimize that situation too.
Sure.
So you start regulating folks that want to comply, and then the other ones stand out a little bit more, and it's easier to go after them.
Yeah, it's easier to kind of root them out of the hen house, so to speak. What do you feel, again, as a business owner? Where does the county go for income now? Because the building trades haven't turned around yet, and that's really, as I have seen it, kind of the county's only real source of new income. Because your tax base is there. Okay, so now we built a new house, so okay, now we're going to reassess that land. Now it's got a house on it, so there's some more income. But if we're not buying and selling new homes, there's not a whole lot of new money coming into the county to help pay for the services that people think they're entitled to from government. So where does this all kind of settle out, do you think?
Well, I guess that'll be up to the new board to figure out. I think we were reacting to what was going on. You have tree mortality. We'd have lost our forest.
Yeah.
We lost the benefit of people coming up and enjoying that, I'm pretty sure. I think that if we have a lot of snow, we'll still get some benefit out of tourism. But not only did we lose the benefit from the tourism, but we also lost the product value. So even if once we start logging those out because they were going to be fire hazard, we're going to pay for it. It's not something that we're going to be able to recover our cost on because it has no value.
Yeah.
So or little value. So the taxpayer ends up paying for that. And I think it's a huge mistake by our California government to allow this to happen for so long. We should have been harvesting on a regular basis based on science.
Yeah.
And we haven't, and now we're in a pickle.
Yeah.
You can't even sell that stuff, and the property owners now have a bunch of valueless timber that they have to get down and pay for. So we have,
and that's not cheap.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be fun at all.
Do you think that in the next month or two, that can the county government line up its ducks to help where the feds and the state said that some money would come in to pay for the tree felling? And
Well, about in April of this year, I started requesting that they hire a forester, somebody in the timber industry that knew it, to start working in the Public Works Department, to be able to put together a plan. How we were going to do that with the burn tree removal here, and maybe an RFP for when it comes for the tree mortality, so it could transition into it. There's a lot of politics that went on there.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty obvious to me that anything I asked for wasn't going to come. But I kept trying. I wanted to hire, that person as a outside contractor, because the only way you're going to get somebody right now, they're so busy right now and they're hard to find. And kept getting pushed back, and then even the auditor controller says, you know what, we can't do that because of IRS stuff, and which wasn't true. And there's a lot of different things that go on in the county that could improve, and I'm hopeful that the new board has a little better luck than I did on motivating some of these things, because we cannot wait around.
No.
So.
That's why I thought the board was wise when it adopted the urgency ordinance. At least you had a couple horses coming out of the barn to go after the cart that had already been sent down the road.
Yeah, I think that people mistook it for something else, like
a permission slip.
Pro-grow, right? Well, I believe people have property rights, and they should be allowed to do certain things. And I believe people have property rights, and they should be protected. So that is going to involve some kind of regulation somewhere, and that's what we attempted to do. It wasn't something that was hey, today we have this regulation, and tomorrow it's going to be fixed. It was something that was going to take a while. It had festered for a long time up here. It was exposed, and then we had an onslaught of newcomers taking advantage.
Yeah.
And so we had to deal with it, and we dealt with the best way we could.
In the best way that you could.
Was it the right way? I guess the new board will determine that.
Yeah. Now, since Measure D failed, because right here at this table you said no on D and yes on C.
Yes.
So now the question, though, appears to be, well, what the heck are you going to tax if you don't establish some kind of growth? And I do mean cannabis growth. Yeah. So what do you get any sense for where that's going to go with the new board?
No, because the only thing that you can tax is an approved grow. I think we have 5 of them so far.
Yeah.
So that'll be a whopping $22,000 times 5, which is not going to take anybody very far.
Yeah.
So if they're not, even though they're all compliant, there's a lot of them that are compliant, and I got to tell you that I know that we had like 730 applicants. I'll bet you that 430 of them would not comply.
Really?
And so if we were able to go out there and actually do those inspections and start eliminating some of those folks, then it'd probably make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable. And a lot of the ones that people were really afraid of were in the rural areas, like in Burson and up in Copper and all of that. If they're illegal, that's where I would attack immediately to get some of that low hanging fruit out of there and have that greatest impact on the community. So
sure.
But I didn't. Everybody has their way of managing things, and it's just the way it worked out.
Well, and this also came along as an issue that I think surprised a lot of people. And that's where the fear came from, because they, like you say, the perfect storm, and it really was a perfect storm. Suddenly the land is laid bare, and you decide you're not going to rebuild because of that dang fire. And so now what do we do with our land? It's not worth anything because it's black. We've got a well and what's left of a septic system, but we don't want to build here. And like you say, here comes some folks who have lots of cash in hand because they're growing elsewhere, either legitimately or not. And I don't think it could have been legitimately, because not many other counties, especially in the Mother Lode, had adopted any kind of ordinances that tried to rein in what could be happening.
Well, you know, and it's kind of true, but we still have Prop 215. 215 allowed people to grow individually, and if you stack those 215 cards, you can grow as many cards as you could stack.
Okay.
You know, they kept it to usually around 99 plants because then the feds wouldn't come in and bother them.
I see.
You know, these folks are they know what to do.
They know what they're doing.
They know how to work the system. They're not dumb people. They're smart people. And the ones I know, most of them don't smoke dope. They don't smoke pot, right?
Yeah.
So they're business people. They want to make sure they want the same things, I think, that we do. They want to have a good community, safe community, and they want to raise their kids here, right? It's controversial what they're doing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like it. You know, that reefer madness thing is absolutely true. You know, everybody except for the people that do the pot got it. So, you know, and I understand that there's a huge culture difference in our county. We have a lot of seniors. We have a lot of, you know, folks that they're from a different age. Okay.
Yeah.
For me, again, it was more about, okay, we have a situation. Let's manage it. I can't get stuck in one side or the other, or you know, I have to manage it. That's the way I looked at it. And so I managed the best way I could. If somebody else comes up with something better, hey, great. You know, I guess we'll see what that is. But I hope they can fund it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is
because
can you fund it?
One of the things I am really concerned about as a property owner and a business owner in this county is the drop in property values when our second economy starts taking a dive. And that second economy is tourism.
The tourism.
And that will affect our government offices, our police, and our fire and protection. All right, so... and then if we do have another, because of the tree mortality, if we have another fire, it's going to be a doozy.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do in the county, and I'm hoping that people will get behind the new board and help them to solve some of these issues, because it's not about me losing my seat or me being in a seat. It's about our county and how are we going to survive this?
And how do we move forward?
How do we move forward?
That's what, so, you know, king for a day, whatever you want to call it, in an ideal world, what would you see the new board doing? Taking the urgency ordinance and moving forward to fine-tune it and do what needed to be done to create the permanent ordinance?
I would do that. I believe the urgency ordinance, it was a lot of work, and it was well thought out. Is it going to please everybody? Is it perfect? No. But we can learn from it and make adjustments. Now, one of the things that I thought that we could do is, I know that there's issues with, you know, some of these farms being in certain rural residential areas. Okay. So you put out the message that, hey, you know what? We don't want them here, right? Yeah. And so, but that's not all of them, because some of them are just fine, but some of them aren't. Yeah. How do you tackle that? Figure out a way to tackle it. Maybe it's you know, like if I go after a beer and wine license in my restaurant, all right, so I go to ABC. ABC sends out a form to my neighbors, and my neighbors get to weigh in on whether they want, you know, have problems with that or not, right? If they don't have problems with it, great.
Great.
If they have problems with it, then we have to mitigate it somehow. Okay, so maybe that's a route they can take. But I just don't believe that it's going to go away. I just don't believe that.
I don't either. And
you could try.
Yeah, well, and you said it at the top of the show. Ban sounds good, but way back when, and it's interesting because it didn't start coming up until right before the election, but where a few people in some letters to the editor of the newspaper and that started mentioning prohibition. And everybody, most of us weren't alive in those days, so maybe saying folks forgot about it is not the right way to word this, but prohibition, all it did was create a boon for the black market. And so banning growing, I don't think personally, is the way to move forward on this. And I applauded the board, this old board, I guess we have to say, for at least trying to take a bull that was already out of the barn by the horns and say, look, here's how we're going to do it, and here's what we have to do it. And by the way, we can make some income on this because we can tax it and so forth.
So, it comes to mind that here we are having a discussion on, me being in office and some of the things that we're dealing with, issues, tree mortality, and things like that. But the main issue always comes back to pot. Or
Yep.
cannabis, and how it just absorbs every conversation. I honestly believe that it is not the most important thing in our county. Right now, in my opinion, the most important thing in our county is our general plan. And because the general plan is our blueprint for the future, and that's future growth and industry and within our county. And I believe that everything else has been a distraction, and it did. The distraction did its job. It took out a couple of conservative-minded supervisors. It put conservative against conservative, and here we are with another board that is it brings uncertainty on even how the general plan is going to turn out now. Even though for the past 2 years it has been vetted through a very good planning commission.
Very good planning
commission. So
I
think that was the bogey all along, actually.
That was it. And so now we'll have to see. So I guess it's tune in next week, folks. Cliff Edson, I want to thank you very much for your service and for being here on this broadcast this time around.
Thank you.
We'll see what comes.
I just want to let you know that I live here, I own a business here. I'm not going away, and I started off wanting to do good things for our community. I'm not going to stop.
And you still will. That's right, folks. So on that note, thanks for joining us this time around on Mondo Calaveras. I'm Mike Taylor. We'll see you next time. Enjoy.